The HR rep placed a contract in front of me. Either half salary or termination. They knew I was raising twins alone. I'll think about it until tomorrow, I replied calmly. By morning, their main competitor offered me triple. The fluorescent lights in the office hummed that familiar Tuesday afternoon tune, the kind that makes your teeth ache if you listen too long. I was staring at my computer screen, trying to make sense of the quarterly reports when Jennifer from HR knocked on my cubicle wall. Her smile looked like it had been painted on with cheap lipstick that morning. "Hey, Michael, could you swing by my office in about 10 minutes? Just need to chat about something quick." Quick, right. Nothing good ever came from HR saying anything was quick. I'd been working at Meridian Tech Solutions for almost 4 years, climbing my way up from junior analyst to senior project coordinator. The pay wasn't amazing, but it was steady. And steady mattered when you're raising 7-year-old twins on your own. Emma and Tyler. My whole world crammed into 2 tiny humans who could demolish a kitchen faster than a tornado and still look at you with those innocent blue eyes like butter wouldn't melt in their mouths. Their mom, Lisa, had walked out when they were 3. Said she wasn't ready for the responsibility, needed to find herself. Last I heard, she was finding herself in Arizona with some guy who owned a motorcycle repair shop. The walk to Jennifer's office felt longer than usual. The hallway smelled like burnt coffee and that industrial carpet cleaner they used every Thursday. My sneakers squeaked against the linoleum, and I found myself counting the steps. 23, 24, 25. Weird how your brain latches onto the stupidest details when anxiety starts crawling up your spine. Jennifer's office was one of those beige corporate spaces that screamed, "We care about our employees," while simultaneously making you feel like a number in a spreadsheet. She had motivational posters on the walls, the kind with eagles soaring over mountains and words like perseverance written in fancy fonts. A dying plant sat on her windowsill, its leaves brown around the edges. "Take a seat, Michael," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. There was a manila folder sitting there, thick with papers. My stomach dropped. She didn't waste time with small talk. Jennifer never did. "Michael, I'm going to be straight with you. The company's going through some restructuring. Budget cuts, you know how it is. We're having to make some tough decisions." I nodded, but my mouth had gone dry. Through the thin walls, I could hear someone's phone ringing incessantly. Ring, ring, ring. Why wasn't anyone picking up? "We value your contribution to the team, we really do. But we need to adjust some salary structures to keep everyone employed." She opened the folder and slid a contract across the desk. The paper made a soft rustling sound that seemed unnaturally loud. I looked down at the numbers. My current salary had been slashed in half. 50%. Gone. Just like that. "I know this is a shock," Jennifer continued, her voice taking on that practiced sympathy tone they probably taught in HR school. "But it's either this adjustment or we'll have to let you go entirely. I'm sorry, Michael. I really am." The words hit me like a slap. They knew. They had to know about Emma and Tyler, about the orthodontist bills and the soccer cleats and the endless parade of school supplies. I'd never made it a secret that I was raising them alone. Hell, I had their artwork taped to my cubicle wall, their soccer schedule pinned to my monitor. I stared at the contract, the black ink swimming a little as my eyes watered. Half my salary. How was I supposed to make that work? The mortgage alone would eat up most of it. Then there was childcare, groceries, utilities, car payments. The math was simple and devastating. "Michael?" Jennifer's voice seemed to come from far away. "I need an answer by tomorrow morning. I know it's not ideal timing, but That's the reality we're dealing with. Tomorrow morning, 12 hours to decide between financial ruin and unemployment. Some choice. I looked up at her, and for a split second, I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt, maybe? Or was it satisfaction? Hard to tell with Jennifer. She'd always been good at keeping her cards close to her chest. I understand the position, I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. Inside, I felt like I was free-falling. This is a big decision. I'll need to think it over. Of course. Take your time. Well, until tomorrow morning. She gave me that painted smile again. I'm sure you'll make the right choice. The right choice. What a joke. I walked back to my desk in a daze. The office suddenly felt different, like I was seeing it through new eyes. Co-workers chatting by the water cooler, typing away at their keyboards, living their normal Tuesday afternoon lives, while my world was imploding in slow motion. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Dad, can we have pizza tonight? Tyler says you promised, but I don't remember. Also, I need new soccer socks. Mine have holes. Pizza and soccer socks. Such simple requests from a 7-year-old who had no idea that her dad was currently staring at financial disaster. I typed back, "Sure, sweetheart. Pizza sounds perfect." The rest of the afternoon crawled by. I tried to focus on work, but every few minutes my eyes would drift to that damned contract sitting on my desk. Half salary or termination. They'd backed me into a corner, and they knew it. By 5:30, the office had mostly emptied out. I sat in my cubicle, listening to the building settle around me. The heating system kicked on with a gentle whoosh. Someone's forgotten coffee maker beeped in the distance. Normal sounds from a normal day that had turned everything upside down. I thought about calling my sister Rachel in Portland. But what would I say? That I'd failed? That despite working my tail off for 4 years, I was still one bad decision away from losing everything. Rachel had her own problems. 3 kids and a husband who couldn't hold down a job for more than 6 months. My dad would have known what to do. He'd been gone for 2 years now, heart attack at 58. But I could almost hear his voice. Sometimes, son, life backs you into a corner. That's when you find out what you're really made of. Easy for him to say. He'd never had to choose between poverty and unemployment while raising twins alone. I gathered my things and headed for the parking garage. The concrete echoed with my footsteps, and I could smell motor oil and that musty underground smell that all parking garages have. My Honda Civic sat in its usual spot, reliable and boring and completely paid for. At least I had that going for me. The drive home took 22 minutes in traffic. I knew because I'd been making this same drive for 4 years, and it was always between 20 and 25 minutes depending on the lights. Tonight it felt longer. Every red light gave me more time to think, and thinking was the last thing I wanted to do. Emma and Tyler were at Mrs. Patterson's house across the street. She watched them after school for a reasonable rate, bless her heart. 73 years old and still chasing after kids half her age. She said it kept her young, but I think it was slowly killing both of us. I pulled into my driveway and sat there for a moment, engine ticking as it cooled down. The house looked the same as always. Small, modest, with the blue shutters that Emma had picked out 3 years ago. "They're happy colors, Daddy," she'd said. Happy colors for a house that might not be ours much longer. The smell of Mrs. Patterson's sugar cookies hit me as soon as she opened the door. That woman could make cookies that would make a grown man weep. And she always seemed to have a fresh batch whenever I came to collect the kids. Her kitchen was stuck somewhere in 1975, complete with avocado green appliances and wallpaper covered in tiny roosters. "They've been angels today," she said, which was her way of saying they'd probably destroyed something, but she was too polite to mention it. Emma finished all her homework, and Tyler only tried to feed Whiskers one cookie. Whiskers was her ancient tabby cat, who had survived more attempts at helping from neighborhood kids than any creature should. He was currently hiding under the kitchen table, eyeing Tyler with deep suspicion. "Dad." Emma launched herself at my legs like a tiny missile. "Mrs. Patterson taught me how to make her special cookies. Can we make them at home, please?" Tyler says they're better than store cookies, but I think all cookies are good cookies, except the ones with raisins, because raisins are just grapes that gave up on life. Sometimes I wondered if Emma's mouth was connected directly to her brain, without any kind of filter in between. Tyler was quieter, more thoughtful, but when he spoke up, it usually meant something. "Dad, you look tired," he said, studying my face with those serious blue eyes. "Bad day at work?" Out of the mouths of babes. I ruffled his hair, which was sticking up in about 6 different directions despite Mrs. Patterson's best efforts. "Just a long day, buddy. Nothing pizza can't fix, right?" The walk across the street took about 30 seconds, but it felt like crossing a minefield. Every step brought me closer to having to pretend everything was normal when nothing felt normal anymore. The kids chattered about their day, Emma's art project, Tyler's science experiment with baking soda and vinegar, the usual elementary school drama that seemed earth-shattering when you're 7. Our house smelled like the vanilla candle I'd left burning that morning, mixed with the faint scent of the lavender detergent I used on the kids' clothes. Home smells. Comfortable smells. Smells that might be gone if I couldn't figure out how to make half a salary stretch to cover a whole life. I ordered pizza from Angelo's, their usual pepperoni and cheese combination that had become our Tuesday night tradition. While we waited, the kids spread their homework across the kitchen table, and I tried to focus on helping Emma with her math worksheet instead of the contract burning a hole in my laptop bag. "Daddy, what's 7 times 8? Emma asked, pencil poised over her paper like she was about to perform surgery. "What do you think it is, sweetheart?" She chewed on her eraser, a habit that drove me crazy, but which I'd given up trying to break. 56? That's right. How'd you figure that out?" "I counted on my fingers, but I ran out of fingers, so I used Tyler's too. He didn't like it, but math is more important than Tyler's personal space." Tyler looked up from his own worksheet. "She poked me in the ribs. That's not math, that's assault." "Assault is a big word for a 7-year-old, I said. "Mrs. Chen taught us about it when Bradley kept pulling Sarah's hair. She said unwanted touching is assault, even if you're just being annoying." Smart kid. Too smart sometimes. I wondered what he'd think if he knew his dad was getting assaulted by corporate restructuring. The pizza arrived during Tyler's explanation of photosynthesis, which was surprisingly accurate for a 2nd grader. We ate at the kitchen table, the kids arguing over who got the piece with the most pepperoni while I pushed cheese around my plate and tried to look like I had an appetite. After dinner, we went through our usual routine. Baths, teeth brushing, the eternal battle over pajama selection. Emma insisted on wearing her unicorn pajamas, even though they were getting too small. And Tyler wanted to sleep in his clothes because changing was inefficient. "Story time," Emma announced, bouncing on her bed like a tiny pogo stick. They shared a room by choice, not necessity, though the necessity part might be coming soon enough. I grabbed their current favorite book, something about a dragon who was afraid of fire, and settled into the chair between their beds. Reading to them had always been my favorite part of the day. Their faces in the lamplight, the way they hung on every word. The questions they asked that made me see stories in completely new ways. Tonight, though, I kept stumbling over words. My mind kept drifting to that contract, to Jennifer's painted smile, to the impossible math of making half a salary work for a whole family. "Daddy, you're reading funny," Tyler observed. "You said dragon instead of wagon, and wagons don't breathe fire." "You're right, buddy. Sorry, I'm a little distracted." "Is it because of your bad day at work?" Emma asked. She was sitting up in bed, her hair a mess of tangles that would require serious negotiations in the morning. I closed the book and looked at them. These two perfect, complicated little humans who depended on me for everything. Food, shelter, security, bedtime stories, help with math homework, protection from all the scary things in the world. How was I supposed to protect them from this? "Sometimes grown-ups have to make difficult decisions," I said carefully. "But no matter what happens, you two are the most important thing in my life. Nothing's going to change that." "Are we going to be okay?" Tyler asked, and the question hit me like a punch to the gut. "We're going to be fine," I said, hoping I sounded more confident than I felt. "We're a team, right? Teams stick together no matter what." After they fell asleep, Emma clutching her stuffed elephant, Tyler with his science book still open beside him, I sat in the living room, staring at that contract. The numbers hadn't changed. Half salary was still half salary, no matter how many times I looked at it. I opened my laptop and started running calculations. Mortgage, $1,400 a month. Utilities, roughly $200. Groceries, $300 if I was careful. Childcare, $400. Car payment, $250. Insurance, $180. Gas, $100. The numbers didn't lie. Even with a reduced salary, I'd be short by at least $300 every month. And that wasn't counting things like clothes, school supplies, medical expenses, or the 1,000 little things that kids need. I could try to find a second job, but when? I was already working 50 hours a week, and the kids needed me home in the evenings. Mrs. Patterson was wonderful, but she couldn't stay late every night, and I couldn't afford a full-time babysitter even if I wanted one. My phone rang, cutting through the silence. Rachel's name appeared on the screen. "Hey, sis," I answered, trying to sound normal. "Michael, how are things? I was just thinking about you guys. How are my favorite nephew and niece?" "They're good. Asleep now, but good. Emma's convinced she's going to be a professional cookie maker, and Tyler's reading about plants like he's preparing for a PhD. Rachel laughed. "Sounds about right. And how's work? Still dealing with corporate nonsense?" There it was. The opening I'd been hoping for and dreading at the same time. Actually, that's complicated right now. The silence stretched between us, filled with all the things I wasn't saying. "Michael, what's going on?" So I told her. About the meeting with Jennifer, about the contract, about the impossible choice between poverty and unemployment. The words came out in a rush, like water through a broken dam. "Those bastards," Rachel said when I finished. "They can't do that, can they? There have to be laws or something." "They can do whatever they want. It's at-will employment. They're not discriminating against a protected class, just restructuring for business reasons." The legal jargon tasted bitter in my mouth. "What are you going to do?" That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? Or in this case, the $20,000 question, since that's what I'd be losing annually. "I don't know. Take the pay cut, I guess. It's better than nothing." "Is it, though? Michael, you can't live on half salary with 2 kids. The math doesn't work. Tell me something I don't know. We talked for another 20 minutes, Rachel offering to help financially if she could, both of us knowing she couldn't. Her husband Jake was between jobs again, and 3 kids of their own meant their budget was stretched thinner than plastic wrap. After we hung up, I sat in the dark living room listening to the house settle around me. The refrigerator hummed. The heater kicked on and off. Normal sounds from a normal life that didn't feel normal anymore. I thought about my options. I could take the pay cut and try to make it work somehow. Cut expenses, find creative ways to stretch every dollar. Maybe sell the house and move somewhere cheaper. Though that would mean uprooting the kids from their school, their friends, their stability. Or I could refuse and let them fire me. Then I'd have unemployment benefits for a while, time to look for something better. But unemployment in this market could last months, and the benefits wouldn't cover even half our expenses. Neither option felt like winning. I was still sitting there at 11:47 when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Heard about your situation at Meridian. Might have something that interests you. Coffee tomorrow morning. David Chen, Pinnacle Solutions. David Chen. I knew that name. Pinnacle Solutions was Meridian's biggest competitor, the company that had been quietly poaching our best clients for the past 2 years. David was their VP of Strategic Development. And if the industry rumors were true, he was the kind of guy who could spot talent from 3 companies away. But how the hell did he know about my situation? News didn't travel that fast in corporate circles unless someone was making it travel. I stared at the text for a long minute, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Coffee with the competition 12 hours before, I had to give Jennifer my answer. The timing felt too convenient, too neat. Things like this didn't happen in real life, did they? My phone buzzed again. 8 a.m. at Brewster's on 5th Street. I think you'll want to hear what I have to say. Brewster's. That little coffee shop 3 blocks from Meridian's office. The one where half our staff went for their morning caffeine fix. Bold choice for a clandestine meeting, or maybe that was the point. Hide in plain sight. I typed back, "How did you get my number?" The response came instantly. LinkedIn is a wonderful thing. See you at 8. LinkedIn. Right. I'd connected with David about 6 months ago after meeting him at some boring industry conference. We'd exchanged maybe 3 messages total, the usual professional networking nonsense. But apparently, he'd been paying attention. I spent the rest of the night alternating between staring at the ceiling and doing calculations that never added up to anything good. By 5 a.m., I gave up on sleep but made coffee strong enough to wake the dead. The kids wouldn't be up for another hour, which gave me time to think. What did David Chen want? Companies like Pinnacle didn't reach out to mid-level employees unless they had something specific in mind. And the timing, right when I was backed into a corner at Meridian, felt too orchestrated to be coincidence. Emma padded into the kitchen at 6:15, her hair looking like she'd stuck her finger in an electrical socket. She was wearing her unicorn pajamas and one sock, because apparently the other sock had run away during the night. "Daddy, you're up early?" she said, climbing onto her usual chair. "Are you making pancakes?" "It's a school day, sweetheart. How about cereal?" "Cereal is just baby pancakes that gave up their dreams," she said solemnly. Sometimes the things that came out of her mouth made me wonder if she was actually 47 years old trapped in a 7-year-old's body. Tyler appeared a few minutes later, fully dressed and carrying his backpack. The kid was like a tiny adult sometimes, organized and efficient in ways that made me feel like a slacker. "Dad, I need $12 for the book fair today," he said, pulling a crumpled flyer from his backpack. There's a book about space exploration that looks really good. $12. Yesterday, $12 wouldn't have made me blink. Today, it felt like a major financial decision. But Tyler's face was so hopeful, so excited about a book about space exploration, that I couldn't bring myself to say no. Of course, buddy. Let me get my wallet. The morning routine rolled along. Breakfast, teeth brushing, the daily search for Emma's other sock, found under the couch cushions. Tyler's reminder that he had soccer practice after school. Normal parent stuff that felt surreal when your world was potentially ending in a few hours. I dropped them off at school at 7:30, watching them disappear into the stream of kids flowing through the front doors. Emma's backpack was almost as big as she was, and Tyler was already deep in conversation with his best friend Marcus about something involving rockets and Mars. They looked so normal, so unaware that their dad was about to meet with a competitor and potentially change everything. Part of me envied that innocence. Brewster's was exactly what you'd expect from a trendy coffee shop. Exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture, and baristas with more piercings than a tackle box. The smell of freshly ground beans mixed with something that might have been lavender or might have been expensive soap. David Chen was already there, sitting at a corner table with his back to the wall like he was expecting trouble. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with the kind of confident posture that comes from never having to worry about making rent. "Michael," he said, standing up to shake my hand. "Thanks for coming. I took the liberty of ordering you a coffee. Dark roast, no sugar. Hope that's right." It was right, which meant he'd done his homework. That should have been comforting, but instead it made me more nervous. "So," I said, settling into the chair across from him, "how exactly do you know about my situation at Meridian?" David smiled, the kind of smile that suggested he knew more than he was letting on. "Let's just say that HR departments aren't as discreet as they think they are. Word gets around. Word gets around that they're cutting my salary in half. Word gets around that they're making some very questionable personnel decisions, cutting the salary of one of their best project coordinators while giving bonuses to executives who couldn't manage their way out of a paper bag." He took a sip of his coffee. "Jennifer Morrison is many things, but subtle isn't one of them." How did he know Jennifer's last name? I'd never mentioned it in any of our LinkedIn conversations. "Look, Michael, I'm going to cut to the chase. Pinnacle has been watching your work for months. The Morrison account? The Hartwell project that came in 2 weeks early and 15% under budget? That was you, not your manager, taking credit." He was right about that. Steve had absolutely taken credit for the Hartwell project. But how did David know the details? "We want you," David continued. "Senior project manager position, full benefits, company car, and a salary that's triple what Meridian is offering you now." Triple. The word hung in the air like smoke. Triple what Meridian was offering, which meant triple half my current salary, which meant... I did the math in my head. More than I'd ever made in my life. "What's the catch?" I asked. David laughed. "Direct, I like that. The catch is that we want you to start immediately. As in, don't go back to Meridian at all. Clean break, fresh start. And if they sue for breach of contract, we have excellent lawyers. And besides, they can't enforce a non-compete clause if they constructively terminated you by cutting your salary in half. Our legal team is very confident about that." I stared at him, trying to process what was happening. 24 hours ago, I was a reasonably successful project coordinator living a quiet life with my kids. Now I was sitting in a coffee shop being offered a dream job by a competitor who seemed to know more about my situation than I did. "How do I know this is legitimate?" I asked. David reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. Employment contract, salary details, benefit package, everything in writing. Take your time, read it over, but I need an answer by noon today. Noon today. The same deadline Jennifer had given me, but with a very different outcome. I opened the folder and nearly choked on my coffee. The salary figure had so many zeros, I had to count them twice. The benefits package included full medical, dental, vision, life insurance, and a retirement plan that was better than anything I dared to dream about. "This is generous," I said. "We value talent. Meridian obviously doesn't." David finished his coffee and stood up. "I have to run to another meeting, but I meant what I said. We want you, Michael. This isn't charity or a rescue mission. You're exactly what we need for the Henderson Project. And frankly, Meridian's loss is our gain." He left me sitting there with the contract, my head spinning like a washing machine on the fritz. Triple salary, full benefits, a company car. Everything I needed to give Emma and Tyler the life they deserved. But something felt off. The timing was too perfect. David knew too much, and companies like Pinnacle didn't usually recruit mid-level employees from competitors with this kind of urgency. I walked back to my car in a daze, the contract clutched in my hand like a winning lottery ticket. My phone was buzzing with messages. A text from Mrs. Patterson about picking up the kids, a reminder from Tyler's soccer coach about practice, a voicemail from my dentist's office about Emma's appointment next week. Normal life stuff happening while my entire world was shifting on its axis. I drove to a park near the kids' school and sat on a bench, reading through the contract word by word. Everything looked legitimate. Proper legal language, specific job duties, a start date of tomorrow morning. But the more I read, the more questions I had. How had Pinnacle known exactly when to approach me? Why were they offering such an incredible package to someone they'd barely interacted with? And most importantly, what did they really want from me? My phone rang. Jennifer from HR. "Michael, I wanted to check in about your decision. I know yesterday was a shock, and I wanted to make sure you had everything you needed to make an informed choice." Her voice sounded different, less confident, maybe even a little nervous. "I'm still thinking it over," I said. Of course. Take your time." "Well, until this afternoon, I just want you to know that we really hope you'll stay with the Meridian family. You're a valuable employee, and we'd hate to lose you." Valuable employee? Funny way of showing it by cutting my salary in half. "Jennifer, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How many other people are getting salary cuts as part of this restructuring?" The silence stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. "I'm not at liberty to discuss other employees' situations," she finally said. "So it's just me." "Michael, I really can't. It's just me, isn't it? This whole restructuring thing is just me." Another long silence. "I think we should discuss this in person. Can you come in this afternoon?" I hung up without answering. My hands were shaking, whether from anger or fear or excitement, I couldn't tell. Maybe all three. Jennifer's reaction had confirmed what I'd started to suspect. This wasn't about budget cuts or restructuring. This was personal. But why? What had I done to warrant being singled out for financial execution? I called David Chen. "I'll take it," I said when he answered. "Excellent. I'll have HR send over the paperwork. Welcome to Pinnacle Solutions, Michael. I think you're going to love it here." As I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. For the first time since walking into Jennifer's office yesterday, I wasn't the victim of someone else's decisions. I was making my own choice, taking control of my own life. But there was still one thing I had to do. I spent the rest of the morning getting my affairs in order. Called Mrs. Patterson to let her know I might be a little late picking up the kids. Stopped by the bank to make sure my direct deposit information was current. Even bought a new tie at Men's Warehouse because starting a new job in a 4-year-old tie felt like bad luck. The whole time, I kept thinking about Jennifer's voice on the phone. The way she'd paused when I asked about other employees getting salary cuts. The nervous edge that hadn't been there yesterday, when she was confidently backing me into a corner. Something had changed overnight. But what? I got to Meridian at 2:30, walking through the familiar lobby with its generic corporate art and motivational posters about teamwork and excellence. The security guard, Frank, nodded at me like always. The elevator played its usual soft jazz that made me want to take the stairs out of principle. But today felt different. Today I wasn't walking in as an employee begging for mercy. I was walking in as someone with options. Jennifer's office door was closed, but I could hear voices inside. Heated voices. I knocked anyway. "Come in," Jennifer called, and I could hear the strain in her voice. I opened the door to find Jennifer sitting behind her desk, looking like she'd aged 5 years overnight. Across from her sat Richard Blackwood, Meridian's CEO, a man I'd maybe spoken to 3 times in 4 years. He was the kind of executive who wore suits that cost more than most people's cars and had the personality of a particularly aggressive piece of furniture. "Michael," Richard said, standing up with a smile that looked like it had been welded in place. "Good to see you. Jennifer was just filling me in on your situation." "My situation?" "The salary adjustment. I want you to know that I've personally reviewed your case, and I think we may have been a bit hasty." He glanced at Jennifer, who was staring at her desk like it might spontaneously combust. "We'd like to revise our offer." Revise their offer. 24 hours ago, they were cutting my salary in half or showing me the door. Now they wanted to negotiate. "What kind of revision?" I asked, settling into the chair like I had all the time in the world. Richard's smile got a little wider, a little more desperate. "Well, we've looked at the numbers again, and we think we can do better than the original adjustment. How about a 10% reduction instead of 50%? Plus, we'll throw in an extra week of vacation time. 10% instead of 50%. Still a pay cut, but not the financial execution they'd planned yesterday. And they were offering it like they were doing me a favor." "That's generous," I said. "What changed your mind?" Richard and Jennifer exchanged a look that could have powered a small city. "We just want to keep good employees," Richard said. "You're valuable to the team, Michael. We'd hate to lose you over a misunderstanding." Misunderstanding. That's what they were calling it now. "Can I ask you something, Richard? Yesterday, Jennifer told me this was part of a company-wide restructuring. How many other employees are getting salary adjustments?" The silence was so thick, you could have cut it with a butter knife. "I'm not sure I follow," Richard said, but his smile was starting to crack around the edges. "Simple question. How many other employees are having their salaries cut as part of this restructuring?" Jennifer finally looked up from her desk. "Michael, I don't think that's really relevant to your specific situation." "I think it's very relevant. See, I did some research last night. Looked at Meridian's quarterly reports, talked to some people in other departments. Funny thing, nobody else seems to know about any company-wide restructuring." Richard's smile disappeared entirely. "Where are you going with this, Michael?" "I'm going to the part where you tell me the real reason you singled me out for a 50% salary cut. Because we all know this has nothing to do with budget restructuring." The silence stretched between us like a tightrope. Jennifer was picking at her fingernails, and Richard looked like he was calculating how much trouble he was in. Finally, Richard sighed. There was some concern about your performance on the Morrison account. My performance? I almost laughed. The Morrison account that came in ahead of schedule and under budget? The one that Morrison specifically requested me to manage again for their next project? There were complaints? From who? Another silence. I was getting good at reading their silences. Steve Carrington raised some concerns about your working relationship with clients, Jennifer said quietly. Steve Carrington, my manager. The guy who took credit for the Hartwell project and every other successful project I'd worked on in the past 2 years. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. What kind of concerns? He felt you might be overstepping your boundaries, getting too involved in client relationships that should be managed at a higher level. Translation: Steve was threatened because clients preferred working with me instead of him. And instead of dealing with Steve's insecurity, management had decided to eliminate the problem by eliminating me. So let me get this straight, I said, leaning back in my chair. Steve complained that I was doing too good a job, and your solution was to cut my salary in half? It wasn't that simple, Richard started. It was exactly that simple. You had a choice between dealing with a manager who can't manage and getting rid of an employee who was making him look bad. You chose to protect Steve. The look on Richard's face told me I'd hit the bullseye. Michael, I think we're getting off track here, Jennifer said. The important thing is that we've found a solution that works for everyone. The 10% reduction, the extra vacation time. I'm not taking it. The words came out calmer than I felt. Richard and Jennifer stared at me like I'd just announced I was joining the circus. I'm sorry, Jennifer said. I said I'm not taking it. Not the 10% reduction, not the 50% reduction, not any reduction. I quit. I stood up and pulled David Chen's contract from my jacket pocket, setting it on Jennifer's desk like I was playing the winning card in a poker game. Effective immediately, I'm resigning to take a position with Pinnacle Solutions. Senior Project Manager, triple my current salary, full benefits, company car. Thanks for helping me realize my worth. Richard's face went through several interesting color changes. You can't do that. You have a non-compete clause. Actually, I checked with a lawyer this morning. Constructive termination through salary reduction voids any non-compete agreements. Your attempt to cut my salary in half yesterday officially released me from any obligations to Meridian. I'd actually learned that from David Chen, but they didn't need to know that. Michael, let's not be hasty, Richard said, his voice taking on a pleading tone I'd never heard before. We can work something out. Maybe we were too aggressive with the initial adjustment. How about no reduction at all? We'll keep your salary exactly where it is. Plus a 20% raise to make up for the stress of the last 24 hours? I'd have to check with the board about that. Don't bother. I've already accepted the position at Pinnacle. My last day at Meridian is today. I headed for the door, then stopped and turned back. Oh, and Richard? You might want to take a closer look at Steve's management style. Because when Morrison calls asking specifically for me to handle their next project, and you have to explain that you forced out their preferred project manager over office politics, that's going to be an interesting conversation. I left them sitting there in stunned silence and walked back to my cubicle to pack up my personal items. 4 years of my life fit into a single cardboard box. Family photos, a coffee mug Emma had made in art class, Tyler's drawing of our house, a few books, and a small plant that had somehow survived on fluorescent light and occasional water. The office buzzed around me like nothing had changed. People typing, phones ringing, Meetings happening in conference rooms with glass walls. Normal Tuesday afternoon stuff. But I felt like I was watching it all from the outside. Like I'd already moved on to whatever came next. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. "Dad, I got the space book. It has pictures of Jupiter's moons. Can we look at them tonight?" I typed back, "Absolutely. We'll look at all the moons you want. Dad has some good news to share tonight." By 4 o'clock, I was walking out of Meridian Tech Solutions for the last time. Frank, the security guard, looked confused when I turned in my badge and key card. "Everything okay, Michael?" "Everything's perfect, Frank. Better than perfect." And for the first time in 24 hours, I meant it. The drive to pick up Emma and Tyler felt like driving toward a new life. I'd gone from financial disaster to dream job in less than 48 hours, all because someone had tried to push me around and I'd finally pushed back. Mrs. Patterson met me at her door with her usual warm smile, but her eyes were questioning. "You look different today," she said. "Good different." "I feel different. Good different." Emma and Tyler ran to the car like they were escaping from prison, full of stories about their day and excited chatter about everything from lunch, mystery meat, to playground politics. Normal kid stuff that felt extraordinary because I could finally give them the security they deserved. That night, over pizza from Angelo's, because some traditions were worth keeping, I told them about the new job. I kept it simple, age-appropriate. Daddy got a better job with better pay, which meant more security and maybe some extras they'd been wanting. "Does this mean we can get a dog?" Emma asked, because that's where her mind always went first. "Does this mean we can afford the advanced science camp this summer?" Tyler asked, because that's where his mind always went first. "It means we're going to be just fine," I said. "Better than fine." Later, after they were asleep, I sat in the living room thinking about the last 2 days. How quickly everything had changed. How one person's attempt to diminish me had led to something better than I'd ever imagined. My phone rang. David Chen. "How did it go?" he asked. "Exactly like you said it would. They tried to negotiate at the end, but it was too late." "Good. I have to tell you, Michael, this wasn't entirely coincidental. We've been planning to approach you for months, but we needed the right moment. When we heard about Meridian's plan to cut your salary, it gave us the perfect opportunity." "How did you hear about it?" David laughed. "Let's just say that Meridian's HR department isn't as secure as they think it is, and Steve Carrington isn't as smart as he thinks he is. Did you know he's been actively trying to sabotage your projects for months? We have documentation." The pieces clicked into place. "You've been watching this whole thing unfold. We've been protecting our investment. You just didn't know you were our investment yet. And now you start Monday morning as senior project manager, with the Morrison account as your first assignment. Funny how that worked out, isn't it?" It was funny. It was also justice, in a way that felt almost too perfect to be real. "Welcome to the big leagues, Michael. You're going to love it here." After we hung up, I walked upstairs to check on Emma and Tyler. They were both sound asleep, Emma still clutching her stuffed elephant. Tyler with his new space book open beside him. They looked peaceful, secure, unaware that their whole world had just gotten bigger and brighter. I stood there in the doorway for a long time, watching them sleep and thinking about second chances, about standing up for yourself when someone tries to push you down, about the difference between surviving and thriving. Tomorrow, I'd start a new job with a new company, making more money than I'd ever dreamed of. But tonight, I was just a dad watching his kids sleep, knowing that we were going to be okay. Better than okay. We were going to be great.